Hello and welcome. This is a recording of a presentation issued alongside the Calgary Food Bank's COVID-19 Impact on the Calgary Food Bank report, which was written to document our experience during the early stages of COVID-19 and up until July 2021. Through this time, we continued recording and monitoring our experiences and believe we owe it to our community to share our reflections with the intention of informing future pandemic response planning.
Over the course of this presentation, we'll be sharing details of how COVID-19 impacted core components of the Calgary Food Bank, namely operations, partner organizations, fund development, volunteers, and clients. By sharing key findings, themes, and threads, we hope that this presentation can contribute to an ongoing effort to examine the strengths and shortcomings of the Calgary Food Bank's pandemic response and the impact of COVID-19 on food insecurity in Calgary. The Calgary Food Bank is the first line of defense for emergency food support in Calgary. We have several programs that allow us to meet immediate food needs. As well, we have an in-house research team, an extensive client intake process, and the ability to examine trends and analyze who is using the food bank, why they are using the food bank, and what factors initiate and hold people in a state of food insecurity.
The Calgary Food Bank has been distributing emergency food since 1982 and has extensive experience at the front line of disasters, floods, wildfires, economic recession. We exist within an ecosystem, and if not for our network of partner organisations who refer clients to or are receiving referrals from the Calgary Food Bank, we would not be able to help households tackle their root causes of food insecurity. This report combines quantitative and qualitative data in the form of volunteer, partner organisation, donor, client, and staff surveys and interviews to bring many voices and experiences to inform recommendations.
As a network, we talk about the need for transparency, for collaboration, for sharing failure, success, and best practice. As Calgary's primary food access organization, we owe it to our community to share our reflections with the intention of creating space for collaborative future pandemic response planning and an understanding of the food insecurity landscape in times of crisis. So in times of crisis, the Calgary Food Bank is first in, last out, meaning that the impacts of crises are felt earlier and last longer for food insecure individuals and emergency response organizations. During Alberta's crude oil crash of 2016, immediate changes to Calgary's GDP growth and unemployment rates were felt. Yet the Calgary Food Bank continued to see an increased demand for hampers in the years following, indicating that a need for emergency food outlasts or even increases in the wake of the initial crisis.
In Calgary, a local state of emergency was called on March 15, 2020. Prior, Calgary already experienced unemployment rates 2.5% higher than the national average. But as a result of the pandemic, Canadians who experienced employment disruptions were nearly 3 times as likely to be food insecure. However, it is important to note that need for emergency food support varied, with those in low-wage or insecure work arrangements experiencing increased stability due to emergency income support programs such as CERB, Canada's Emergency Response Benefit.
Coordinating the operations of a large organization in a complex environment such as the Calgary Food Bank can be difficult in the best of times. In response to the state of emergency, the Calgary Food Bank closed for 2 days to adjust our processes. The urgent establishing of health and safety measures, which followed recommendations for the Centre for Disease Control, World Health Organization, and Alberta Health Services, were vital to continued operations that could meet a potential increase in demand while reducing traffic inside our buildings and limiting contact points to protect all Calgary Food Bank community members.
The following changes were made to reflect health and safety measures. We reduced the number of people in communal spaces at the Calgary Food Bank. A mask mandate was introduced in April 2020, before the city's mask mandate was introduced. We designed and implemented a drive-through model for hamper distribution in place of the in-building shopping model. This addressed COVID-19 safety concerns whilst also reducing the time of hamper collection, a client burden the Calgary Food Bank was already looking to ease. A new pickup option was introduced that allowed any third party, such as a friend, family, or other delivery service, to pick up a food hamper on behalf of a client. This contactless delivery meant that people who were quarantining could access emergency food. The Calgary Food Bank launched an online hamper request option in December 2020 that we continue to iterate and improve. As a result, the Calgary Food Bank's call centre saw a 6% decrease in clients phoning in to request their hamper, and 4.1% of overall requests utilised this online option. Policies were also adjusted to respond to increased uncertainty regarding the operation of support provided by other community organisations for our emergency food hamper clients. Referrals from partner organisations were no longer required after the client's third year-to-date hamper. The maximum number of hampers per year was suspended. Previously this was 7. And lastly, the minimum wait time between hampers was reduced from 30 days to 17 days, then finally to 10 full days, where it remains.
To address the root causes of hunger, the Calgary Food Bank maintains many partnerships to help connect food insecure individuals to a variety of supports. The importance of collaboration became apparent throughout the pandemic, as when one of our partners is negatively impacted, we feel the effects throughout the rest of the system. According to the Calgary Chamber of Voluntary Organizations, up to 20% of Alberta's nonprofits were at risk of closing their doors permanently due to the impact of COVID-19. The concern with partner closures was the potential that fewer clients could access additional support from partner organizations as compared to pre-COVID times.
The Emergency Food Hamper Programme provides 7 days worth of food to clients based on the household size. In a survey regarding the impact of COVID-19 released to our emergency food hamper partners in February 2021, 70% of the 62 respondents said that their days or hours of operations were impacted. 93% reported some level of impact on the capacity of their programs to reach outcome targets. These reductions in capacity and availability to serve clients confirm the necessity to eliminate emergency food hamper referral requirements, as many clients would have been unable to access emergency food if the policy had remained.
Fighting the root causes of hunger is a key piece to our mission statement, and we do this by providing our emergency food hamper clients with referrals to community organizations. Prior to COVID-19, it was necessary that clients connect with one of these community organizations in order to access further hampers. The purpose of this was to ensure that clients had access to resources that could support them further in overcoming food insecurity. But with an increased population citing the pandemic as the direct cause for their food insecurity, the requirement for partner organization referrals was not relevant for these individuals. As a result, we removed the requirement for clients to have an agency referral in order to access an emergency food hamper. But unsurprisingly, this led to changes in the volume of client referrals from partner organizations to the emergency food hamper program and vice versa. So referrals into the emergency food hamper program from partner organizations dropped to 35% in April 2020 compared to 44% in April of 2019. And the decline continued, reaching a new low in November of 2020. Referrals out accompanied 11% of hampers in the period of September 2019 to February 2020. This decreased to 1% from March to August of 2020.
The demand for emergency food hampers in the 2019 to 2020 calendar year decreased by 6%. The demand for emergency food hampers was at an all-time low in May 2020. This coincided with the introduction of CERB payments. These payments exceeded the average monthly income of Calgary Food Bank households by $585. It is possible that the income stabilization from these payments reduced the need for emergency food support for many existing clients at this time. Even though overall demand was low in May, the Calgary Food Bank saw a 70% increase in the proportion of new clients accessing hampers compared with April 2020, with unemployment rising by 79% between February and April 2020. A corresponding spike in new clients is unsurprising. In the following month, the number of hampers requested and distributed returned to normal levels. From September to November 2020, we saw a 35% drop in new clients compared to 2019, yet the total number of emergency food hampers distributed rose by 3.3%. This may be attributed to existing clients accessing hampers more frequently after the reduction in emergency relief benefits available. 90% of food banks across Canada indicated that increased financial supports were a reason for a decline in usage. This was reflected in an internal Calgary Food Bank report, where 21% of partner organisations mentioned increased financial support as a potential reason for decreased engagement.
The Foodlink program provides bulk food to charitable organizations. To continue operations during even the most stringent Alberta Health Services restrictions, the Foodlink distribution model was transformed from a shopping model to an order and pickup model. This helped minimize close contacts and enabled continued support for partner organizations. The Calgary Food Bank was also more diligent in enforcing eligibility criteria for this program. To participate in Foodlink, organizations must be charities registered with the CRA, and they must meet the requirements of the participation agreement. A key component of this agreement is that food must be used for meals on site before, during, or following programming.
The Food Share program helps ensure that excess donations reach food insecure individuals across Alberta and other provinces by sharing excess with other food banks. A survey completed by 41% of Food Share program partners, 12 food banks, found that although only one of the 12 experienced a closure lasting longer than 1 week, 33% changed their distribution hours. This chart reports changes and demand experienced by Food Share partners. 41.6% experienced disruption or changes to their operations. 80% experienced a decrease in volunteer availability. Volunteer shortages were also cited as a top challenge throughout the pandemic. 58% saw an increased number of clients, and like the food bank in Calgary, 8% of Food Share food banks experienced an increase in monetary donations, which we'll cover later in this presentation. The Hampers for Homeless program facilitates connection between homelessness services and their clients. Content of Hampers is designed to meet the needs of this population. Content can be collected for distribution as pre-built hampers or provided in bulk form for partners to build hampers to specific requirements. There is also a small number of hampers which are distributed directly from the main Calgary Food Bank location to people experiencing homelessness. Overall, the program saw decreased demand. 3 out of 12 H2, Hampers for Homeless partner organisations, temporarily or permanently closed. This was primarily due to restrictions that limited drop-in services. The Calgary Food Bank saw a 65% increase in the number of H2 hampers distributed directly to clients at its main location.
Breakfast Club of Canada is partnered with the Calgary Food Bank to purchase food at a bulk discount for in-school meal programs. The Calgary Food Bank also operates the Weekends and More program, connecting with partner schools to distribute hampers to students to provide breakfast, lunch, and dinner over the weekends. But with the pandemic forcing schools to close, it was no longer possible for teachers to hand out these Weekends and More hampers safely, thus putting this program on a temporary hold. Meals on Wheels Calgary faced a similar dilemma with providing hot lunches in schools. So looking for another avenue to provide students access to food, Meals on Wheels and the Calgary Food Bank started a collaboration. It was decided that hampers will be built and distributed at mobile distribution points throughout the city. This collaboration allowed both the Calgary Food Bank and Meals on Wheels to continue providing food for students in the community in a time of crisis when it otherwise would not have been possible. By understanding the many challenges faced by the Calgary Food Bank and its partner programs in maintaining service provision during COVID-19, the need for support from the community at large is clear. With evolving demands and reduced volunteer availability, the resources of donors and volunteers remain essential to carry out the work of the Calgary Food Bank.
The COVID-19 pandemic had major impacts on the Calgary Food Bank's ability to host in-person events and connect with the community. Like most nonprofits, the Calgary Food Bank relies heavily on the support of the community. This support allows the Calgary Food Bank to transform every $1 donated into $5 worth of food to be distributed. 85% of food donations come through food industry partners, including grocery stores, producers, and distributors. Food donations varied in the early months of the pandemic due to a shift in prioritization of supply chains, notably during the initial panic buying, but the annual food donations not only remained stable, but the volume actually increased by 6% in comparison to the previous year. With changes in Calgary's unemployment and GDP, it was expected that fund donations would show a similar pattern as a result of the pandemic. However, the Calgary Food Bank saw an increase in donations. Between 2019 and 2020, the Calgary Food Bank saw a 318% increase in monthly new donors. The number of new donors rose from 149 to 903 in 2020.
Challenges to fundraising that Calgary Food Bank staff identified included the limitation of external visitors to our building, the inability to visit partner organizations, and the ability to host third-party events. Despite these challenges, the Calgary Food Bank saw overall a 35% increase in donations from 2019 to 2020. But despite this welcome support, the Calgary Food Bank also saw a 6% decrease in emergency food hamper demand. This aligns with findings from a Food Banks Canada study, which found that 50% of food banks saw little change in demand in the beginning months of the pandemic. This decrease occurred concurrently with the release of Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the federal government's income support program. When donors were interviewed about their motivations, it became apparent that COVID-19 did not impact their philanthropic priorities, but rather it highlighted the vulnerability for food insecurity in the Calgary community. The conflicting perceived need for food support with the demand seen throughout Canada suggests a need to always bring awareness to the prevalence of food insecurity, and not just during immediate crisis.
Volunteers are crucial to operations at the Calgary Food Bank and among most food banks and non-profits to keep costs low and to keep community engagement high. At the Calgary Food Bank, volunteer roles include the warehouse, call centre, distribution, ID checking and off-site, all of which were reduced by 50% compared to 2019 to ensure safety and distancing protocols. 47% of volunteers surveyed for this report stated that the changes, such as the use of PPE, distancing, and new processes, such as the drive-through, made during the pandemic did not impact their ability to volunteer. 38% of volunteers surveyed expressed wanting to volunteer more than once a week and found COVID-19 to be a motivating factor for volunteering. With layoffs and lockdowns, many volunteers utilised their time at the Calgary Food Bank to create routine and to get out of the house. While the new processes generally had a positive impact on volunteers' ability to serve clients, volunteers were not immune to the challenges that the pandemic created, such as the decreased interaction because of PPE and distancing requirements. However, volunteers expressed that these safety measures were necessary and manageable.
Adaptations made during COVID-19 by the Calgary Food Bank ultimately aimed to serve the client experience first and foremost. While all sectors experienced disruptions and changes in their employment situations, low-wage workers experienced disproportionate impacts of lockdowns due to layoffs and reduced hours. In December 2020, paid employment hours decreased by 39% for those in the lowest wage range as compared to December of 2019. Considering the deep links between low income and food insecurity, these reports predict concerning potential for increases in food insecurity as economic challenges prevail. We know that the average Calgary household accessing emergency food support has a monthly income of $1,415, with AISH, the Assured Income for the Severely Handicapped, wage and government income support, including programs such as the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, being the top three sources of income. Insufficient government benefits, unemployment, and reasons related to COVID-19, such as being laid off, self-quarantining, reduced hours, or being unable to work due to school closures, were cited as primary motivations for seeking emergency food support. On average, the most significant monthly expense is housing, costing an average of $900. Other top expenses include childcare, averaging at $360, and vehicle or debt payments averaging at $300. The average Albertan spends nearly 50% of their income on shelter, transportation, and food combined, but the average household accessing the Calgary Food Bank spends an average of 64% of their income on shelter alone. To address the issue of food insecurity, affordable housing and income-based interventions must come first.
Through one-to-one structured interviews with clients, we were able to understand the impact of COVID-19, as well as gather their feedback on the COVID-19 protocols and procedures in place at the Calgary Food Bank. 100% of clients felt that the COVID-19 precautions did not create any additional barriers to accessing the Calgary Food Bank services. Further, 50% of them voluntarily identified that the drive-through system at the main warehouse was an improvement to Hamper pickup, as it improved efficiency and provided a greater sense of confidentiality. 100% of clients interviewed also felt that removing the yearly cap of 7 hampers was a positive change, as was decreasing the wait time between hampers, because this allowed them to have an ongoing food supply throughout the pandemic.
This report proposes 3 recommendations and accompanying action items that are intended to inspire, engage, and empower the community to work towards a food-secure future. The first recommendation is that lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic should be used to improve future crisis planning. Action items include that feedback should be sought out in ongoing performance management evaluation in order to be resilient and agile. Feedback should come from all levels of stakeholders, including clients, staff, volunteers, and partners. Contingency plans for volunteer shortages. While volunteers are crucial for the success of nonprofits, volunteer levels may be impacted by personal and widespread challenges, such as a pandemic, that impact their capacity to donate their time. Cross-training staff might be one example of a contingency plan.
The second recommendation is improved awareness of food insecurity in Calgary. Building awareness of the ongoing state of food insecurity in Calgary is paramount to securing support that matches the evolving needs of this population. The increase in fund donations was an interesting finding of this report. The pandemic highlighted the need to tackle food insecurity. However, food insecurity and its complex social roots were present before the pandemic hit. Communication throughout the community about food insecurity in Calgary could help generate sustainable support for populations experiencing food insecurity and increase advocacy around addressing root causes of hunger.
The final recommendation is increasing collaboration with new and current partners. As the effects of the pandemic continue to emerge, collaboration is important to tackle the root causes of food insecurity, recognizing that these are linked to greater social and economic circumstances. Action items include prioritizing partner outreach and relationship management. This means that more direct collaboration between organizations is an avenue for fighting root causes of hunger that benefits from mutual investment. Using performance evaluation metrics to assess partner organization effectiveness. We believe that in order to build trust, clients must be directed to targeted organizations with evidence-based support that they work to address the root causes of food insecurity. And the final action item is to seek out resources and training to build organizational data capacity.